Welcome to the Daily Drum for Monday, February the 23rd, 2026. I'm Ebony McMorris. Harold Fisher has the night off. Tonight on the Daily Drum, we're talking about a danger facing far too many young people: teen dating violence. February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, but here in the DMV, recent cases have shown this is not just a teen issue. Many adults assume that it can't happen to their child until it does. Abuse can start with controlling texts, jealousy, pressure, and isolation long before it turns physical. So, what should parents be looking for? What conversations need to happen at home, in our schools, and elsewhere? And how do we make sure young people know that love should never come with fear? Tonight, we have a panel of experts to help us drill down on the issue. My guests, Dr. Indira Henard, Executive Director of the DC Rape Crisis Center. My next guest, Dr. Jamal Stroud, Executive Director of Big Homie Little Mentoring. And our final guest, Tristan, Recreation Specialist with the Prince George's County Department of Parks and Recreation. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you for having us.
Right. Absolutely. Just a few quick facts I want to go over to let our audience know how serious this is. About 1 in 3 teens in the U.S. reports being physically, sexually, or emotionally abused by a dating partner at some point during their adolescence. Less than 1/3 of teens in abusive relationships ever tell anyone about the abuse. Emotional or psychological abuse is far more common than physical violence, and studies show up to 60 to 76% of teens report these non-physical forms of abuse. Tech and digital behaviors are also a part of teen dating violence. Roughly 1 in 3 teens report some form of cyber abuse from a partner. And I already see Dr. Stroud nodding your head. I'm going to start with you to start. When we say teen dating violence, what does that actually look like today, and how common is it here in the DMV?
Oh man, thank you so much for just having me on this platform. First off, when we talk about teen dating violence, it happens. And a lot of times our teens typically try to sweep it under the rug because of embarrassment, or they may feel like it may be a retaliation, or they may not even be believed in. So we got to make sure that it's not just only drama, it's trauma. So we got to be mindful for those things. So when we're talking about it, like you said earlier, there are so many different ways of it. It's not just the physical punching, it's the social media, it's the finances, it's the cash app, it's you name it, they're doing it. So we just got to be mindful for those things. So I'm gonna pass it back to you. I don't want to keep on taking all the time, but I'll pass it back to you.
No, and I want to make this a conversation. Well, all our guests, whether I directed one or the other, everybody can jump in, because Dr. Henard, being the executive director of the DC Rape Crisis Center, I mean, you guys are fielding these calls and dealing with it constantly. Give us a picture of what's happening.
Yeah, so I mean, I think folks need to understand that 1 in 3 teens experience teen dating violence. And we need to understand that it happens across a spectrum. We also need to understand that it happens to all teens of all walks of life, and being able to understand what it looked like in terms of behaviors, from controlling behavior, that can be emotional behavior, that can be physical behavior. We need to understand the role that social media plays in teen dating violence. I think we also need to understand the family and what's happening at home, and how we can build trust and safety with our teens as well.
You know, it's so funny when I think about this. I think some of the behaviors that the teens may see, and I'll say adults feel this way too. You don't even put it in the category of violence. Sometimes it's just like, this how we talk, this how we do, this is what it is, right? And so you accept it until it gets too far, and then something happens where it may present like violence to you, but by that time it has gone on for so long. Tristan, I want you to hop in here too, because you know, teen dating violence doesn't always make headlines unless something happens, and then everybody's wanting to talk about it, right? And then we come out with what we've seen in our families, but we know based on the stats that it's happening daily. What should those stats be telling us about the urgency? Speak to the urgency of this issue.
Yeah, the urgency is that it's not just a 1 in 10, 1 in 3. It's everyone. We were teens at one point. We all want to date. It's just a fact of life. And sometimes teens don't have I'll say the tools to navigate these situations. A lot of times we follow the patterns of our family. We've seen this in our homes. We see it on television. We see it on TV, and it's sensationalized. So they think it's normal, and it's not normal. So we have to just address it, and also just give our teens the space to be open to explain what they're going through.
The parents who are go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to follow up on a point that Tristan made. The other piece is that teen dating violence is happening younger and younger. Right. And so that's a key point. We're seeing dating, 11, 12, 13 years old. Right. So the other piece is language matters. Words matter. How are we defining dating? Right. When you hear 11, 12, 13-year-old dating, folks are like, what do you mean they're dating? Like, what does that mean? But in their world, dating is dating. It may look differently based off of your age, but I think we also have to be mindful of what's happening in the environment that is getting them to that point.
That is such an interesting point with our baby girl that we raised. The question is, when can I have a boyfriend? And this question was and these kids are asking these questions at like 8, 9, and I never thought that was cute. I said, absolutely not, Right. But there are many parents who allow their kids 10, 11, 12, to begin dating, and so they don't understand the parameters and the rules or what that even means. Yeah. Why do you also think? Let's actually get to the parents. What are some of the early signs that they need to be watching for their child that let them know that they're in an unhealthy or abusive relationship? And should we put an age on what kids? Is it an age or is it a maturity? Right. Like, what is it?
Right. I mean, I think parents need to pay attention to the little things because they lead to the big things. If you see behavior changes in your child, if you see them withdrawing unexpectedly, the other thing I'm a big proponent of, and this may sound a little bit old school, but we need to be checking social media. Right? You don't get a free-for-all on your tech, on your iPad, on your cell phone. There should be, controls. You should be checking those chats. There should be boundaries around tech because a lot of this teen dating violence, it starts with technology. It starts with technology, right? And then it begins to escalate. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it can also start with bullying, right? We see a lot of bullying happening on social media as well. But social media technology is a double-edged sword. And teens, if they're always on their phone, if they're always anxious to respond to somebody, those are warning signs. It is nothing to check those text messages, those chats, those Snapchats. All of those things are important.
I'm glad you said that because a lot of abuse, especially we're talking about teen dating violence, doesn't happen physical first. Can you talk about, Dr. Stroud, even some of the emotional and manipulation or intimidation among teens, especially when you link it to social media? Because I found some chats where a girl had broke up with a young guy, but it was in a group chat and everyone was discussing it. How is he going to tell her? And so she ended up having to get counseling because it became this big social affair of how he was treating her and then called her a B.
Right. And then when we look at that or the warning signs of just an unhealthy relationship, one thing we have to be mindful for is that patterns don't change. But also, even with our younger kids, when we talk about healthy relationships, we have to look at the green flags, the red flags, but also telling our kids that, hey, these red flags never turn green. No matter what they say, no matter how cute they are, no matter what they say, they never turn green. So for one, we talked about that extreme jealousy. You sit next to somebody and that person is having a whole tantrum. You may have 10 different text messages on your phone about move away from this person. We got to be mindful for those things. Another thing is you always got to share your location, isolation from family and friends, explosive tempers, name calling. We talked about it already. Pressure to have sex, threaten to self-harm yourself if that person leaves. So these are some things that's happening on a daily, and it can happen so fast because of these cell phones. I could send 30 messages in 30 minutes or quicker than that, or I could send so many harsh videos and you thinking, oh, I'm just sending it. They love me. They just caring about me. But no, this is excessive. And we have to tell our kids, hey, if anybody is excessively sending these things, and it goes back to our parents, We have to check the phone bills, check the data, check the
Mhm.
history, check
Yep.
what's going on. As parents, we can't just give these devices and say, hey, freely do what you got to do, because our
Mhm.
kids don't know how to hold themselves down or have those parameters for safety guidelines. But as parents, we have to. And I say that too, because I got a 7-year-old. He like, yeah, dad, I got 2 girlfriends. I'm like, oh boy, we already
Mhm.
here. And
Right,
just
right, right.
Right.
and it sounds cool as a man. Oh yeah, my son got girls, but no,
Mhm.
do you not? You don't even know how to clean up your rooms. I know you don't know how to do a relationship.
Facts.
You get upset when I take the iPad, so I
Yeah.
already know that's not a good thing. So we just have to be mindful for those things as parents, but
Yeah.
also for kids to talk about those healthy relationships.
Yeah. And I think the other piece to that is, and I know this may be controversial, but men are not just the perpetrators. Many
Mm,
boys and men can be
Yes.
victims of
Yeah.
teen dating violence. Women,
Absolutely.
girls can be the aggressor, right?
right.
And so we have to get out of this narrow lane that we think of teen dating violence, that it's only the boys who are hurting the girls. Absolutely not. There are girls that can also hurt the boys. The other
Mhm.
piece is, when we're thinking about resources and how to support, it needs to be culturally responsive, right?
Mm,
It
mm.
needs to be culturally responsive. There's not a one fit all model for this, and you need to be mindful of the services that you're putting out, right? We are a big believer that if you don't have effective services if it doesn't have a direct response to racism and oppression. And so you have to be mindful that with different cultures, different communities, it's going to look different.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
you have to be mindful. It may not look like, quote unquote traditional teen dating violence, that we know of. It may show up as something different in our Asian American communities, in our Islam communities, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to be mindful of that, and the role that religion can play in this as well, depending on the community and the culture you're talking about.
I'm glad you mentioned all those things, and it's so very important. I wanted to ask about a lot of these things that our kids do, and the way they respond and communicate. A lot of times stem back from the home, or what they're
Mhm.
seeing
Mhm.
in the home, and we've talked about that. And we're seeing an uptick in domestic violence this winter, meaning these kids are in violence. Many kids are in violent households where they are
Mhm.
seeing
Right.
physical violence, they're seeing psychological violence go back between the people that are in their home, and that spills out into their own young relationships, and that go from 7-year-old to a grown woman.
Mhm.
um how do we begin to talk about that, and how we begin to also deal with that? Because sadly enough, it hurts me and all of us when we see situations like this end up in suicide,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then someone
Yeah.
being killed by the other
Yeah.
person, or harming the other child, or child coming to school with a weapon or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah. I
want
mean,
to.
oh, no,
Sorry, Indira, because
no.
we spoke a lot about technology, but we have to go back to the old school parenting as well. You need to know who your kids are hanging around. You're going through the phones, you're seeing those names. You need to put a face to those names and also see who those parents are of those children.
Yes.
We have to
Mhm.
start introducing ourselves and actually building a community amongst the friend groups, because that's how we know what's going on, what type of household these kids
Right.
are being raised in, and the morals and values that their parents hold. And that's how you can also dictate who your child can be around.
Right.
Mhm.
No, go ahead, Dr. Stroud.
I was just gonna say, to take it a step forward. I know we have to continue to do that, but sometimes our parents are just trauma from what they experience as well too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's
Yep.
really hard to say, "Oh, you got to do better," but that
Yep.
parent don't know right from wrong either,
Right.
and they may be in that same triangle situation as well. So we need to take it one step forward and just involve in our community. It may be a
Yep.
mentorship program. It may be a faith leader. It may be just something that's
Mhm.
in the community
Yep.
that can model a healthy relationship. Talk about the emotional regulation. Talk about
Mhm.
consent, talk about conflict resolution, because no matter where we
Yep.
go, it's going to be problems, but we got to learn how to work those things out. Another
Right.
big component is self-worth. A lot of our kids can't even look into the mirror because they feel
Mhm.
ugly, they feel ashamed,
Mhm.
because they judging themselves on what's the next trend on IG or TikTok.
Mhm.
They may not have it. So these are just some things that we want to make sure that
Mhm.
we learn about before we actually start that quote unquote dating. And then when we talk about silence, silence creates vulnerability. So when our kids are suffering in silence, they don't get no extra cool points. Many of
Mhm.
our parents are suffering in silence, but they don't get no extra
Yeah.
help. So
Yep.
we got to be able to say, hey, I need help. I'm drowning here. How can I make this happen? So those are just some things that we can
Yeah.
continue to prevent as well.
I mean, and to that point, intergenerational trauma is real,
Yeah.
right? It is real. And so if we are supporting the child, the teen, we also need to be supporting the family. Right? It is the individual, family, and community. And a lot of it has to do with historical trauma. A lot of it has to do with what I call these kind of cultural mama-isms, which is what happens in our house, stays in our
Stays in our
house,
house.
being able to lift the veil, right? What does quote unquote teen dating violence look like in a Black household? Right. So again, being able to have these hard conversations, being able to have these necessary conversations, but also looking at our institutions. So it was mentioned around kind of our religion, our faith leaders, the role of the church, the role of faith communities can play a role in this, right? That can be a support system. But before any of that happens, we have to put some language to what we're talking about. We have to normalize that it's okay to talk about this. And we know that this happens and kind of what that holistic support looks like, because you can't just focus on the child and not be talking to the parents.
I want to bring in, go ahead.
I just wanted to say one last thing that really ties into what Doctor said as well too. Sometimes we need therapy right now because our parents wasted our time, but also we currently are looking for love in bedrooms because our parents didn't love us in the living room. Think about that.
Woo!
So that's something right there, because we see
That
the
part.
stuff that's happening in the house and they don't love us. So we going outside the house to find any form of potential love. And it may be the most drastic, ugliest love, but they still feel like, hey, my parents ain't pay attention to me. This must what love must truly look like. But on the contrary, it really doesn't. Love shouldn't hurt. Love shouldn't have pain. Love shouldn't have regrets and all of those type of things. So I'm gonna pass it back to you. I'm sorry, that Doc, you lit a fire
No,
under
that
me
was
real
good.
quick.
No. Look, we having a
That was a
conversation
gem.
here. That right,
That was a
Tristan.
gem.
Like, clock it. So,
Yes.
before we end, we have a few minutes left. I also want to talk about teen dating violence and the LGBTQ plus community. What that looks like, because it's one thing to identify it, it's another thing to come to solutions and how and what we do about that. But this is another community that sometimes when we talk about dating and violence that we sometimes kind of skim over, right? But these are also many who don't have anybody to talk to.
Exactly.
Not sure where to go, don't want to talk about it,
Right.
but
Or they
not
already have a
bragging that I'm
strained
this bad, that
relationship
other
with their
dude.
parents.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Tristan, can you talk about that?
So that situation sometimes can be already tense and the communication can already be lacking. A lot of teens dealing with LGBT issues, they're not as forthcoming because they're afraid of judgment. So to add that layer on of being in a relationship where you might be getting the love that you're not getting from your parents, it can still be toxic.
Yeah.
But teens are looking for somewhere to go, somebody to reach out to and have a community with. And with LGBT communities, a lot of times we don't choose our biological family, we choose a chosen family in a lot of cases. So, but those can be toxic because you have to think there are all teens going through the same situation and they don't have the tools to regulate or deal with it. So they're just misery loves company. So we have to make those spaces a little more open. I know at Park and Recreation, we definitely are trying to make those spaces because in the past it was very toxic masculinity being at a rec center. But we've opened up to the arts and to younger kids to express themselves. Even offering mental health conferences. We have one coming up on May 20th at Kentland Community Center. And I'll be hosting it. And we have different workshops and different professionals that will be focusing on self-worth, mental health, how to regulate, how to deal with emotions. So, but the LGBT, it's definitely very prevalent. But the one message is that, just find somebody that you trust, whether it be an adult or a peer or a teacher, and just try your best to explain your situation.
I think because the danger is this: if we don't, if the community that cares doesn't, and sometimes the language doesn't, the home may not have the language or the know-how. Even the reason why the community has to be around them is because there is always a community waiting to bring them in and teach them what they don't. And a lot of times, especially with our teens, it is found online.
Mhm.
And you don't really get the real story until something breaks out or something happens. And we go down the rabbit hole of the friends. Well, did you know? Did you see this? Did he tell you this? Did she tell you that? And
Mhm.
somebody knows somewhere
Right.
what's happening. And so, just to tell even the parents listening, your child's life is not their own. You
Mm.
got
Right.
to get into the details of their life, even if it means
Mhm.
they ain't gonna like you anyway for a while. Give them
Right.
a reason. It's
Yeah.
because I'm trying to keep you safe. It'll come back. The love will come back around later
Yeah.
because they're gonna need you later. But for the community, for that person who may not even have a child, but is able to get to a child, and I'm looking at even the faith centers. Talk to
Mhm.
the kids that's in your church, in that's in these communities, because the parent may be spent or going through
Yeah.
some other psychological problems. We cannot just walk past and say, "Hey, how you doing?" sometimes and not stop and give
Mhm.
love. Um, with I wanted to ask you, Dr. Stroud, with big homies and low and with your mentoring, what are some of the things that you're hearing? I want to know what the kids are saying.
So, and when we talk about like LGBTQ plus, some of the things that I hear when I go to schools or just in the community, just working with kids, a lot of times girls say girls can't abuse other girls, and then when it comes to boys,
Mhm.
Oh,
boys say, oh, two boys fighting, that's mutual. So when we talk about that, they already kind of downplaying like, hey, I am in an abusive relationship, but if it's same sex gender that's fighting, it's not abuse. And then they always say, uh, relationships is all about
Mhm.
drama. Obviously, it's not, because we got to make
but
sure
they
that we
seeing
understand.
that.
Right.
Yeah, these are some
Right.
things here, and then also they talk about violence only happens in heterosexual relationships.
Mhm.
But I always love to combat that with is that abuse is about power and control, not about gender. So we got to truly,
Mhm.
truly understand those items there. But like you said earlier, the foundation of our conversation was at home, community. What can we do to continue to inspire,
Mhm.
educate our youth, all walks of life, no matter what they like? Abuse is
Mhm.
abuse. And that's something that we all have to wake up to make sure that we are saving our next generation.
We've got just a couple of minutes left, but what I want to do is just go around the board and have our guests. So you've got 3 minutes to just say something very quickly to round it out before we have to go to break. And Tristan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I always say have a safety plan. So parents should talk to their kids and, hey, if I'm not the person that you want to talk to, who is somebody that you do trust in our family or in your friend group or parent of one of your friends? Like have a safe space for your child. It might not be you. And sometimes that does feel a little, hurtful that you're not the space that your child chooses to, divulge their secrets to. But if you know the person and that they have someone, I think that's more important than anything.
Dr. Stroud, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. We must teach our young people that being chosen is not more important than being respected.
Well, he gave you some more time. Dr. Henard, go ahead.
I would say quickly that adults, we need to show up, we need to pull up, and sometimes we need to stand in the gap for our young people. We need to let them know that they have a safe place. We need to cover them in all seasons. And this is the time where we need to be the community.
Absolutely. And just 2 seconds each. Where can people go if they're not going to, because we're going to continue this conversation, but where can they go, Dr. Henard, really quickly?
You can call our 24/7 hotline, which is 202-333-RAPE.
Tristan.
You can reach out to pgparks.com for any type of events or any type of information you need.
Dr. Stroud.
Anywhere on social media at Big Homie, Little Homie Mentoring.
We have to take a quick break and we have to say goodbye to our 96.3 audience. But more of this conversation on teen dating violence will continue on Sirius XM channel 141 HUR Voices and 96.3 HD2. Up next on WHUR is the original Quiet Storm with the Love King, Raheem Devon. I'm Ebony McMorris. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Daily Drama on 96.3 HD2 and Sirius XM Channel 141 HUR Voices. I'm Ebony McMorris in for Harold Fisher. February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, an effort to focus on advocacy and education to help prevent dating abuse. We continue our conversation with my guests this evening. First, welcome Dr. Indira Henard. She's Executive Director of the DC Rape Crisis Center. Our next guest, Dr. Jamal Stroud, Executive Director of Big Homie, Little Homie Mentoring, and Tristan Colding, Recreation Specialist with Prince George's County Department of Parks and Recreation. I want to talk specifically about each of your organizations. Tell us specifically what you do in the areas of addressing teen dating violence and how you get the work done. Dr. Henard, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so the DC Rape Crisis Center, we are the oldest rape crisis center in the country. We are 53 years old. We have a specific teen program. We know that sexual assault intersects with all types of violence. So we really provide individual and group therapy for our teens. In addition to that, we have our 24/7 hotline. In addition to that, we do community engagement. In education, we also do training and technical assistance, and we also do policy work. We know that in order to disrupt this, we have to do it from the micro, meso, and macro. We also know that the teens who experience the greatest forms of teen violence sit at the sharpest edges of society. So we definitely have our boots on the ground. We are doing outreach at the bus stops, at the metro stations, wherever teens are. We have a team out there because we really believe that sometimes you have to meet kids where they are, and you have to bring the work to them instead of them coming to you.
Always. Tristan, talk to us about the work that you do with Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, so I'm a senior recreation specialist supervising teen and youth programming for Parks and Rec. So we basically have community centers all around the county. If you haven't been to a recreation center in your area, please research it and see where it is, because there's definitely awesome programming going on for your youth and your teens. We actually shut down every Friday or Saturday of the week for teens, specifically from 7 to 10 p.m. We call it Teen Night. And that's a space just for our teens to come congregate, build community, whether it's they're into art, sports, anything like that. And then we also have special programs. We have teen summits. We also have a No Excuse for Dating Abuse program. I don't know if you guys were familiar with that. My colleague Carlotta, she used to host it every year. So now I've taken on more of the mental health aspect. So that's why I have it's called The Power of You. So it's a mental health conference for youth. And it's to come to show their self-worth and to give them tools to navigate in life's, stresses.
Are there ages for that? Because that's very good.
Yes. So our teen program is preteen and teen. So it's ages 10 to 17. And then
10 is preteen?
It is.
Jesus. Okay.
It is. They're starting young. And we've actually noticed that the most engagement that we're getting now is from the preteen age bracket. Most of our programs, the preteens are coming out. The teens, because they dealt with COVID a lot, we've seen that they've kind of isolated themselves, or even they've matured in a way due to COVID that they're not interested that much into, coming out. They're on their phones. So we've kind of pivoted to focus on the younger age group to make sure that we build that foundation for them as they grow older and deal with these situations.
Wow, I love it. And Dr. Stroud, tell us about what you do.
Yes, at Big Homie, Little Homie Mentoring, we work with young males who are in fatherless homes, and from the ages of 6 to 17. We understand healthy men create healthy relationships, but also healthy relationships create healthy communities. So we are pouring back into our community. We are raising up the next fathers, the next husbands, the next future leaders of tomorrow. So we are making sure that we are doing our due diligence to raise protectors and not perpetrators.
I caught myself when I was yelling, 10 is preteen. It's just so much. I thought you were going to say 12 or something. But you're right. Absolutely. Because I do hear kids all the time. We talked about that earlier and talking about dating and relationships. They're very interested. There was a report that came out that talked about how these kids these days, literally, when you talk about their level of maturity, what they're dealing with, you gotta go 3 years ahead. So when you say in 10, you're really 13. When you go on 8, you're talking about 11. So that's incredible. I want to talk about what role schools play in prevention, education, and intervention when it comes to teen dating violence. Or I say, what role should they play, Dr. Henard?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, kids spend a lot of time at school. right? And I think we need to look at the curriculum. We need to be talking about and educating about teen violence within the schools. There should also be programs in the schools for teens who may be experiencing this. I think the counseling offices need to make sure that they have expertise in this issue. Just because you're a counselor does not mean you have expertise in this issue, but definitely creating what I love to see, which is safe zones within different entities, so that teens know that whatever is going down with them, that they have a teacher, they have a place where they can go. But I think with the schools, it's about education. It's about having policies for when this does happen, right? And what those policies look like for both people who are involved, not just the perpetrator, but the victim. And then what is the holistic responsibility of the school community and what that communication looks like to the parents? Because what tends to happen is that teachers will see things. They will see things in the hallways. They may see things in the bathrooms, on the football field, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they may not think anything of it. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that teachers have the capacity to respond to this, so that they know what they are responding to, and to make sure they're educated. Because 9 times out of 10, when something goes down in schools and the parents roll up there, the teachers and the principal, they don't know what this looks like in the context of school, right? So then you're dealing with another issue. So I think education for not just the teachers and the administrators, but for the entire school community.
I think part of that also is, and Dr. Stroud or Tristan, you can talk about this, is I think parents sometimes, or even children, don't know how to advocate for themselves. Like what you just said makes sense.
Absolutely.
Had I really had thought about that, even enrolling our child in school, that would have been one of the questions that I had going in.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of the biggest things that the kid in their life is socializing, but very rarely do we go in. We ask what sports there are. And then we maybe ask for the college pipeline, but we don't ask what resources are available or what is the protocol if this happens at the school.
Absolutely. I'll get even a little bit more personal. Like I was one of the kids that were extra hyper and things like that. And they tried to put me on Ritalin. You know, that was the thing that was in the day.
Yes.
My mom had to go to the Board of Education and advocate for me. My child does not need that. I was in tag. I was bright. It's just I had a little bit more energy. So I think parents definitely need to feel more safe in advocating for their kids. And sometimes it's intimidating. You could be a single mom, or you're working a couple of jobs and you're stressed. And you go into that school and there's people looking at you, telling you about your child. That can be very intimidating. And sometimes you don't know how to react to that.
Yeah.
So I think that we just have to create better safe spaces for parents as well and give them the tools to advocate.
How can community programs and safe spaces, how do you see that helping to reduce isolation, Dr. Stroud, and vulnerability for teens? Because isolation goes hand in hand. Anytime you're talking about abuse, there is some form of isolation somewhere.
Absolutely. And then when we talk about anytime, sorry, maybe on my end. But when we talk about just the isolation, we have to make sure that we are creating these safe spaces with our kids. Think about it as an adult. How can we truly grow if we're not safe? We are looking over our shoulder. Mind is racing 1,000 times. And think about it from a younger child's standpoint. How can they truly learn if they're not in a safe environment? So when we talk about schools and just community, we got to make sure that schools and our community are not just educating their minds, but they are also reshaping just the way relation standards are. Teaching about, what is a healthy relationship? What does it truly look like? What does respect look like? I said, when we talk about that, we just want to make sure that we have that trauma-informed approach. Talk about that childhood trauma, exposure to domestic violence, community violence. These are all these type of things. And we talk about that ecosystem of how can we make our community much better. We have to talk about what's truly happening outside of the walls of the school or outside of the walls in that community, so we can truly have a good focus or a good pulse on what's happening, so we can continue to grow and enhance our young people.
And sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just as a piggyback to that, and I can't get away from not saying it. We are in the midst of DC budget season. And so, and DC is facing $1 billion budget cut. So we need to make sure we are funding our after school programs, our community programs for our youth, because they need a place to go. They need support. Like back in the day, for those of us who are on the old school track, like we after school, we didn't come home till like 5, 6, 7 o'clock.
The
We
lights
had
came on.
right, we had Girl Scouts, Rainbow, YWCA, church stuff. We had all kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Right. And we didn't walk in the house till it was time to eat dinner. And so we need to get back to keeping these kids busy, right, after school, and making sure they have programs, educational programs to go to, because a lot of these kids that I hang out with east of the river and in other parts of DC, they're bored. I mean, they are literally
That
bored.
is one of the number one reasons.
They don't have
That is one of the number one things that they are bored.
bored.
Yes. Go ahead.
I was just going to say this. We run this program called Empowering Kings, where it connects hip hop music to chess, and it also talks about all the life components. So it's a powerful thing there where we talk about, oh, who you like, Lil Baby? Okay, this song came from Lil Baby, it was a sample. So it kind of talks about the history of it, but it also talks about just the life examples that we're using, such as sexual education, domestic violence, healthy relationships, you name it. So that's a pretty cool thing. It's called Empowering Kings, and we have a graduation ceremony where we give the kids crowns and tiaras and all of those type of things. So it's a really rich program there.
What are some other services that may be available, and this is to all of you, for teens or families who may need help, and how do they reach out safely? Are there any other programs that you want to point people to?
Yeah, so I think, first and foremost, the National Hotline for Domestic Violence also has a teen component. That's a really great resource. I would also look at to see if, because there are some schools within the DMV that have special programs as it relates to this, but definitely, check out like your youth serving orgs, like the Boys and Girls Club, the YWCA, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, certain mental health organizations like the DC Rape Crisis Center, other, social service organizations have support for kids, because what we need to realize is that our work is intersectional, that, there is no single issue, because we don't live single issue lives. And so we have to understand that the multi-victimization that teens face, it is all connected: domestic violence, sexual assault, etc. And so we as providers and even as a community, we have to be able to address that.
No, that's good. Dr. Stroud?
I was just going to say, if anyone is in the PG County, Prince George County Family Justice Center has a program called Camp Hope America. And that's just a powerful program where kids who may have been exposed to domestic violence or maybe in some type of violence there, they have a powerful program there where they take the kids to camp in the summertime, but they also do healthy relationship tracks all throughout the year. So that's a powerful thing there to kind of have that wraparound services.
I want to also just drop in there, don't be afraid if your child, your child has witnessed domestic violence and you may be out of the situation. Counseling and therapy is so important.
Amen.
I know you talk maybe one-on-one and you mommy didn't or daddy didn't or this is what we're doing, but I've seen it. I've had to, in my church, help families, put them with people who can counsel. We cannot, as a community, run away from therapy, because you don't know. They may say, okay, dad, okay, mom, or whatever, and you will see that relationship play out in their life.
Yep. I mean, I think that is so important. Of course, I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, but I think particularly for communities of color, but I'm going to focus on the Black community right now, we have to really break down that stigma around mental health and therapy. Therapy is okay. It does not mean that you have a diagnosis or anything like that. But it is important that we continue to see Black professionals like the ones on this call and in the community who are showing up doing this work. Because when that happens, the conversation is different. The narrative is different. The response is different. When we are involved, the response is different. And our elders, because there's also an intergenerational conversation to have, it also begins to pivot. And so I think that's also important, that we recognize that it's important that we see us in this work.
No, absolutely. Let's talk about what happens when the situation does get violent. we've kind of talked about some preventive things, but many times the issue does get violent. For adults, you typically can get a protective order. That's not always the case for teens.
Mhm.
So if there's a teen that may be listening or something, what are the options that they have? What's available? Go ahead, Dr. Stroud.
I would just say get a trusted adult involved. That's probably the number one thing. Get someone that's on your side that you can share and talk to, that's not going to judge you about what happened or who did what
Mhm.
or what happened and when. Find that trusted adult where you can kind of confide into, so they can actually get together, speak to parents, speak to school administration, speak to community partners, so we can kind of build a healthy resource around that person, a healthy barrier around that person. I think that'd be really ideal, because if not, that child may try to take it into their own hands, may harm themselves or harm that other
Mhm.
person, or therefore they may share it with somebody on social media, and then it gets all around the school, and then therefore it's another cyberbullying situation. So just making sure that they find someone that they can truly trust to kind of talk to, so they can navigate them in the right way.
No, I think that's very important, especially, there may even be a counselor or a school that's trying to figure out how to navigate when they see that in the school system, or they witness something with their kids. Tristan, when with the kids that are coming in, and you're saying this, the young people asking, when you see troubled signs or something there, what is it that you all do with Parks and Recs?
A lot of times we try to do a lot of peer-to-peer mediation, or because a lot of kids are more forthcoming with their friends. So we try to build relationships with all the kids. So not necessarily that the child that might be going through the situation might not be forthcoming, but one of their friends who has a relationship with one of our staff members, they might say something. And then that gives us the alert. So, look more into that child, build more of a rapport with that child, to make a more safe space, because we're just about making a safe space. Park and Recs, we're literally, we get all the kids from school. So once the kids leave schools, they usually come to us. So we get a lot of aftermath from school drama and things like that. So we try to just make sure that our staff are engaged with every child, every adult, every person that walks through that building, to build that safe space. Because once you feel like the Park and Recs is a home away from home, you open up and we learn. We learn habits. We learn, oh, you're not talking today. Or you didn't go to the vending machine. You didn't ask for a snack. What's going on? Like, those are the kind of things that we try to build. And that's how we kind of, fight against that.
The interesting thing about a lot of times when we talk about abuse, domestic violence, or even sexual abuse, that person that has been victimized a lot of times doesn't want to speak out, because there is a guilt that comes on the person that is a victim, and they might want to talk, but they don't want to get the other person in trouble, or they're worried about retaliation. Let's really talk about sometimes where you talk about a lot of the people that you deal with, Dr. Henard, are those who kind of like living on the edges, and so you also got to go back to a community. The person that may have done it is somebody that you may not want to rep with their crew, or something like that. So in those situations, what is your advice? Like, talk to someone who may even be listening, who is like, I don't know, I don't know what to do. I'm scared of retaliation. I don't know. I've been raped, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, fear is real and being scared is real. And to go with what Dr. Stroud said, hopefully they can find a trusted adult. But I think one of the deeper issues is that they also have to recognize that what is happening is not right. That it is not right. And once they get there, hopefully they can go to a trusted adult, which is why it's so important to create these safe spaces, safe zones, but also talking about these issues on a regular basis, so it becomes normalized that, this is a real thing. Because again, being able to put a name to this, being able to put language around this is important. That's why a lot of folks are scared and they don't report, because they don't know if what happened to them constitutes teen violence, or that it's okay, because they may have been in situations where they've seen that normalized. So that's why it's important that we have these ongoing conversations, and that we're really talking to young people, like hanging out with them, not just hanging out with them for an agenda, but just spending time with it, kicking it, having pizza, movies, finding out what their language is in their world, and spending time with them can also begin to build that rapport.
I think we should take that message of see something, say something, and put that in the community. And the say something is just checking in on people. If you
Yep.
see something, if you identify something, forming a relationship,
Yep.
not to lecture, but for care and understanding. Many of our kids need a model. They don't know. Look, let's deal with adults. Don't know what healthy relationships are.
Yep.
Just don't.
And what I would also say is, thinking about what is a safety plan if a young person in your life gets in trouble, right? And they can't put a name to it or they can't voice it. But, one of the things that I've done with young people in my life, because they may not be ready to talk about it, they may be scared to talk about it, but if they send me a text and it's a black heart, then I know it's a SOS and I need to reach out to them. They may not want to put it in writing, but if I get a black heart from them, then I need to stop what I'm doing and reach out to them and figure out what's happening. Like that is the SOS, because I want them to know I'm always a safe person, right? I don't care what time it is. My phone is on 24/7 anyway, just because of the work I do, but just wanting them to know that you may not be able to speak it, but if you can type it and just give me a sign. So one of the things I co-create with young people who I think may be more susceptible or more vulnerable is, what is a safety plan that we can talk about that feels comfortable to you? Like if you're in trouble, but if you can't talk about it or you don't want to talk about it in that moment, can you send me a message or send some other trusted adult a message, right? And everybody's on their phone. All these young people are on their phone. So sending an emoji could work.
I love that idea.
I love that too.
I literally am right. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to, say something or type something really long, but just that black heart immediately knows we got a plan to get out of the city, but do we have a plan for community?
Meet them where they are, communicate how they communicate. Us adults, we got to be on social media, even though we don't like it. We got to know all these new social media channels and language and what's trending and what's not trending, because that's how you keep up with how what I call this thing is escalating.
Mm-hmm.
On the first side, we talked about, the role of social media. I slightly want to bring that up for those who may just be catching this on this side too. But what would you say, and I'll ask Dr. Stroud and Tristan this, what are some things you need to look for, be alert for, as far as social media and your child, and to kind of check up on this? Because I always say there's always a path to a lot of this violence as we go through their social media, maybe changes in their behavior.
A quick thing that I can say is look at their stories. If they're on IG, if they're on Snapchat or TikTok, look at what song they tag to the story that they're saying, because they may not say, hey, I'm hurt and I'm in an abusive relationship. But if you listen to the lyrics of that song, or they keep on playing that over and over, that may be a cry for help, a silent cry to say, hey, I need help. I'm drowning. This is what's happening. So that may be just a quick sign that you can find to say, hey, something is truly going wrong in this child's world.
I love that.
Absolutely. And I will always say, just check those DMs and check those comments. A lot of things happen in those comments. If you scroll down long enough, you'll see it. You'll get a picture of the story. So a lot of parents, I know they want to give their children autonomy and independence to having like a cell phone, but you need to have that password. I have a goddaughter. My finger is on that phone. My fingerprint is saved. So I go through that iPad. I look at those text messages and the social media as well. Because you have, and it might feel like an invasion of privacy for them, but you're a parent and you want to keep them safe. Sometimes you have to cross them.
Absolutely. We've got about 5 minutes left. Just a couple of topics that I just want to kind of go over. One is how do we challenge these? And we mentioned it earlier, but specifically, how are you challenging harmful ideas of masculinity, of control or violence before it shows up? What are some points that you're teaching your kids? Tristan, I'll start back with you.
Yeah, I actually just try to focus more on the young men when it comes to expressing their emotions. A lot of time they confuse power and control with being a young man or like showing their emotions. And there is a spectrum of emotions. You don't always have to either be angry or sad. You can say, that made me feel a little uncomfortable. Like just giving the words and the to identify what that emotion is, it helps out a lot.
Absolutely. I think we need to, you said this before, everyone on here, that we have to learn their language.
Mhm.
Because kids will think you're corny in a second and shut down.
Yeah.
They just be
Yep.
like, you don't even get it. You don't even get it. But we have about 3 minutes left. But Dr. Stroud, with big homie, little homie, what are some of the things that you say when it comes to that, addressing toxic masculinity?
When we talk about all that toxic stuff, we just talk about just the unprocessed pain will lead to undeveloped purpose. So we always talk about just learning who you are, why you created. Live with a purpose, talk with a purpose, understand with purpose, connect with purpose. When our kids don't feel like they have purpose, they don't feel like they don't deserve this world. So just learning about the purpose is truly important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was good. Last question as we end out, and I'll start with you, Dr. Henard. If you could leave parents and caregivers with one message tonight, one action they could take immediately, 30 seconds, what would it be?
It would be to reach out for support and that you aren't alone.
Love it. Tristan Colding.
Just sit down with your child. Literally turn the TV off, put the phone face down, and just have a 5 to 10 minute conversation. Just a simple conversation just to open up that safe space.
I love it. And Dr. Stroud.
Be that parent that you wish you had. That's it.
I know I got your information in the beginning, but I want to make sure those who are listening, they like what they hear and they want to connect with you. Dr. Stroud, give us your information, your socials.
On all social media, big homie, little with the LIL, homie, mentoring.
We hear the little homies in the background, right? I thought you tried to block on your shoulder. I was like, they don't care. They like, whatever. It is what it is. Tristan, give us your information.
You can reach out to me directly at tristan.colding@pgparks.com, or for any information on Parks and Recreation, pgparks.com.
And Dr. Henard.
You can also reach out to me directly at Indira, which is INDIRA at DCRCC.org.
I love it. We are out of time, and this has been such an amazing conversation. I even took some notes on my own. I want to thank each of my guests for joining us this evening to share their time and expertise. As we close tonight's conversation, remember, awareness is protection. Keep the lines of communication open with your youth and the youth around you. Know the warning signs. Don't be afraid to have the hard conversations. And that is the Daily Drum. I'm Ebony McMorris. Harold Fisher returns tomorrow. And good night, everybody.